We want to talk about the learning and the relearning brain. Now this is crucial. Anxiety is learned. It's learned. We have a learning brain. We have a marvelous brain. It's a learning machine. And the learning is through associations. Now what do I mean by that? Something comes through the senses and we learn from that. For example, if we touched a hot stove, how many times you have to touch a hot stove before you won't do it again? Probably once, right? Because it's a powerful learning. You touch it, you go, ow, the senses send up a signal to your brain, whoa, and you look right away, what did I do? Well, oh, I touched that red glowing thing, and that's hot, I can't touch that again. Now that's a normal reaction, and that's how the brain should work. It should make a healthy association that if that red glowing circle there is on, I can't touch it. But what happens if you have an old-fashioned stove that's white, kind of a cube, and it's the same shape as your washing and drying machine? Now the little infant goes into there and it doesn't want to go near the washer or dryer. Why? Because it looks just like the stove. See, that's an over-sensitivity. That's an over-association. That's like getting bit by a dog, therefore all dogs are mean, right? That's an over-association. And we have to be careful because a lot of our anxiety is like that. And we need to back down. We need to back down. You know, a person's look on their face. If we got in trouble a lot and there were certain looks, that becomes then a trigger. If you wanted to get into me, and I tell it in my class a lot, all you'd have to do is, you know, put your glasses down like this, get a clipboard, and go something like, Ron, can I see you for a minute? And oh my gosh, you know, I could feel it from my toes coming right up, that anxiety, that flush of anxiety, adrenaline. What's wrong? What did I do? Am I in trouble? And that's what I would have to do. Now, when we're talking about a learning brain, there's actually 3 stages of learning in our childhood. There's 3 types of learning. The first one is our emotional learning. Now, between birth and 7 years old, children learn emotionally. The prefrontal cortex, right? The prefrontal cortex doesn't even come online. The rational part of the brain doesn't even come online till 12. Now, yes, I know children can learn music, they can learn the alphabet, they can do some math, I get it. I know they can do rational computations and everything, but that doesn't mean that emotionally they're rational. Have you ever seen 2 grown men fight? Don't they look like little 8-year-olds? That's when we go, quit acting like a child. Why? Because children act emotionally. And so we learn emotionally between the birth and 2 years of age. We know that there's certain brain waves. I studied neurofeedback, and so they did studies on children, and they found that between 0 and 2 that it operates mainly at the lowest EEG, and that is delta waves. And so, you know, children are waking up, going back to sleep and that, but then when they get around 2 years old, up through 7 and so, the babies work in a higher frequency, more in a theta. And we didn't always know that. And what's significant about that is theta is strong in the imagination. It's strong in the suggestibility, much like hypnosis, if you will. And so things that children learn emotionally stick. They stick. They get in there. They get in the brain and they stay. It's the way God wired us. We need to learn. We're of all species practically, we're the most vulnerable when we're born. I mean, think about it. You know, we can't do anything for ourselves. And even at 2, 3, and 4, we're still immature and we need our parents, we need caregivers. And so the brain then uses our imagination. It's strong in imagination at that age and suggestibility. And so that's why mud pies are real pies, right? And the teddy bear is my best friend. And so, you know, we live in imagination. Now later at 12, we find that prefrontal cortex comes online. And even then, it takes up to about 22, some say 25, for it to really do its full maturation. And so we see that we learn emotionally in the first stages of life. When we talk about emotional learning, I've identified 5 stages. Now, this isn't written in cement, it's wet cement, but I think it makes sense, because what happens first is that we have an emotional experience. And children can experience this, right? They can experience them. They may not know why. They may not know exactly what's going on. What they do know is that they're vulnerable. What they do know is that the caregiver should be taking care of them. And what they do know is that they've been traumatized. And so if they've been humiliated or disrespected or abused or beaten or bullied, laughed at, neglected as a child, any of these, left out, sexually abused, robbed, I mean, this leaves an impression on them, right? That's an emotional experience, and it sends out an alarm. It creates then what I have down as B, emotional feelings. So we have an experience, and right away when we can feel fear or horrified, nervous, hopeless. We can feel shock or fright, anger, aggravated, resentful, or we could be, just miserable, unhappy, melancholy. It, depends upon the circumstances, but there's a whole host of ways that we can feel. And then out of that feeling, if it continues, one and done, we may not think nothing about it. But if it's continuous or it happens often, we start to wonder why. The brain asks why, and then we start making assumptions. And children aren't really able to blame their parents or the caregivers or siblings. They're instead, what's wrong with me? I'm the victim. I'm the one being hurt here, so there must be some reason. It must be something wrong with me. And so some of the beliefs, and this isn't necessarily cognitive beliefs, these are emotional beliefs. Now, what do I mean? Have you ever met someone that's beautiful or handsome and yet they feel they're ugly? I mean, you scratch your head and go, what are you talking about? Well, the fact is they emotionally learn that. They aren't ugly, but they can't see that emotionally. Maybe mom was combing the hair and one day and said, you're never going to get a boyfriend with this kind of hair. Who knows? Maybe they had a little body image issue going on. They got teased. You're too skinny. You're too this. And they got this feeling over and over again. And they emotionally started to believe that they weren't good enough. They were ugly. And that sticks. That sticks. That's an emotional learning. And so the belief there is, I'm ugly, or I don't deserve love. And so you see, these are what do you feel is true. It's what you feel is true. Doesn't mean it's true, but we feel that way. If I said, are you stupid? And I hate even talking that way, but if I said that, chances are I would think everyone watching here would say no. I may not be the most intelligent person, I may not be good at everything, but I'm not stupid. But if I said, have you ever felt stupid? I can remember in 3rd grade when the teacher asked me to come up, caught me off guard, come up to the board, Ron, and write the answer down. Oh my gosh. If I even could remember the answer, by the time I was so nervous of having to go to the front, my memory was shut down. I couldn't think of anything. All I remember is the kids laughing at me, and I believed I better not get in front of people again. And yet today, here I am making a living speaking to people, and I have for many years. And so we can overcome those kind of beliefs, but they stick with us until we change them. And then there's an emotional fear. You see, the belief, once we start believing it, we go right to the belief and it creates a fear. Now, what's so interesting is those fears are very similar to what the primal fear was. When we first started, we felt, bullied, beaten, accused or whatever, and then we had this feeling. Then the belief. Well, what's the belief? We're afraid what? We're going to get bullied again. We're afraid we're going to get abused again. We're afraid we're going to get humiliated again, you see. And so that original damage done causes us then to fear that same thing to happen again. But yet there's one more step. More than an emotional fear is an emotional alarm. We react to the alarm. Now, maybe humiliation is important. We don't want to be humiliated, but there's something deeper. Why would humiliation cause us to overreact like this? There's something else, and that's what children know. Children don't know what death is. They don't know these things, but they do. Their body system knows about annihilation. It knows about becoming a non-being, and that's what it fears. It's there to protect the vulnerable child, and that's what sets off our alarm. I remember when I first thought of that, and that is, I came to this and I was writing it out and I thought, you know, I'm not going to die. And I thought, wow. And I've made that a mantra in our class, and I feel like getting a t-shirt, I'm not going to die if. And I remember thinking, you know, I'm not going to die if my boss doesn't like me. I'm not going to die if I lose my job. Now, do I want to? Of course not. I'm not going to die if you don't like me. What that does is takes away the alarm. It softens that alarm. And there are others, like, you know, I'm going to die. There's others like, I'm going to be annihilated. I'll become a non-being. I'll be sent away. I'll be exterminated. I'll be obliterated. I'll be, you know, left alone, abandoned. Those are all these kind of very primal, deep, fearful reactions that we have. Now, are they true? No. I'm not going to die if you don't like me. That's where I need to start concluding. I need to start shutting down anxiety. And I need to recognize that this overactivated amygdala is coming out of these exaggerated alarms. And it's a broken alarm. It's no good. It's faulty wiring due to the beliefs that were wrong. You know, what do you do with damaged goods? What do you do if you know, I'm broken? You throw away things like that. You don't keep damaged goods. You don't keep broken items. You throw them away. And a child knows that, and it causes this kind of anxiety. So we need to cut to the chase and realize, you know, and start knowing the truth. The truth will set us free. And so we need to start learning that, hey, this alarm is nothing based but on faulty wiring. I'm not going to die. I'm not damaged goods. I'm not broken. You know, it's faulty wiring. The assumptions are wrong. And it's a broken alarm. It's a false alarm. I'm not going to die. And I'm going to use that language. I think it's a good one. If the smoke detector was going on in here and there's no smoke, the detector is faulty. And friends, when we're over anxious and we're reacting to a false alarm, it's faulty wiring. If it's not, you know, if we're over-exaggerating our anxiety to the event that we're in, then it's faulty wiring and it's a false alarm. After emotional learning is social learning. And social learning is where we really cement a lot of this. Let me give a good example. A child that maybe feels socially conscious, okay, and is sensitive, doesn't, you know, has maybe almost a social anxiety, doesn't like strangers, doesn't like, you know, doesn't feel good about themselves, and they go to school now. And now they're socially interacting with others. And don't ask me how. We have some kind of a detector that detects who the socially relevant ones are, right? The socially acceptable one. There's the cool kids or whatever. And so he's walking down the hall and maybe doing that walk of shame, you know, and he looks up and boom, there's some of the popular kids, and he averts his eyes and he keeps walking, but he can't help it. He's going to look again, and he looks, and what's he see? He sees one of those kids, and they're laughing and they're looking right at him. Now, who do you think? Who do you think that kid thinks they're laughing at? Well, him. And right then, it's reinforcing there's something wrong with me. They're laughing at me. I'm not socially, and so there goes the walk of shame again, right? And that we do that thousands and thousands of times, and that's social learning. It cements a lot of those preconceived ideas that we had, that we learned in childhood. And we socially, unless we change them, we repeat them over and over again. And it becomes a well-worn pathway. It becomes a well-worn warn pathway in our brain which creates an oversensitive amygdala, an oversensitive alarm.